The chips are named, the institutions are named, the years are named. What the record does not name is whether a single one of those transactions ever closed, and that gap is what two very different characterizations of the same filing set are actually arguing about. 3,800 procurement records, 500 flagged instances, one public dispute. The question is what the paper trail establishes on its face and what it declines to say entirely. Wirescreen's analysis covers procurement filings from Chinese government and institutional buyers, collected across roughly 6 years beginning in 2019, surfaced and published by the New York Times on June 1, 2026. The filings include purchase intent records from units the analysis identifies as linked to the People's Liberation Army. That is what the document is. The first thing to understand about what it establishes, and the second thing to understand about what it does not, are not the same understanding. Read plainly, the filings establish that units the United States government has placed on restricted lists produced written procurement intent, by name, for specific Nvidia chip models. The model designations in the filings include the Ascend-adjacent products Nvidia designed after the first round of export controls, and also the models the controls were originally written to stop. The A100 appears by name. The H100 appears by name. So does the A800, which Nvidia had configured in part to remain compliant with the October 2022 rules, and the H800, which followed. The institutions recording this intent include entities associated with nuclear weapons simulation, with cyber warfare operations, and with university-affiliated defense research laboratories. The naming in the record is not generic. It is the kind of specific that a procurement office produces when it knows what it wants. The record establishes that this behavior does not cluster at a single moment. It spans from 2019 through the period covered by the Wirescreen review, which means it crosses multiple distinct rounds of United States export restrictions. The October 2022 rules explicitly named the A800 and H800 as restricted for China. The August 2023 rules extended that coverage to the A800 and H800. The procurement filings on Wirescreen's account continued to name these chips after those rules took effect. 500 discrete instances across 6 years across multiple institution types is the scale the record makes visible. A single misfiled request reads as administrative noise. 500 named instances across 6 years across multiple institution types constitute a pattern, and the record makes that pattern legible. The record also establishes that this analysis produced a direct public argument. Wirescreen's lead analyst characterized the findings as irrefutable. Nvidia responded the same week and characterized the concern as silly. Both characterizations are in the public record. The procurement filings do not resolve the argument between them. Reading the same filings again, the omissions are where the document becomes a different kind of text. The procurement filings do not establish delivery. In Chinese institutional practice, a procurement filing is a statement of intended purchase. It is a budget authorization, a tender notice, a vendor solicitation. Think of it this way. A procurement filing is the entry on a shopping list. A shipment record is the receipt. Wirescreen found the shopping lists, detailed and dated and specific down to the model number. What no one has yet produced is the till receipt, and those are not the same document. The chain of custody from procurement intent to installed chip, the quotation, the invoice, the shipment, the customs clearance, the installation, is entirely absent from the filings Wirescreen analyzed. The filings do not establish a supply source. Nvidia's public position is that the company complies with export control law and does not knowingly sell to prohibited end users. The procurement record does not name a vendor. It does not name a distributor, a re-export route, or a jurisdiction of purchase. The institutions recorded what they wanted. The record is silent on who, if anyone, provided it. The filings do not establish that the institutions expected to succeed through legitimate channels. A procurement record naming a restricted chip is not, on its face, evidence of evasion. It could also record aspiration. It could record a supply chain probe. It could record a bureaucratic holdover from before the restrictions took effect, or a procurement template that was not updated after the relevant rules changed. The record does not settle which of those readings applies to any specific instance among the 500. The filings do not establish what happened when a procurement attempt, if it was an attempt, failed or was redirected. The Wirescreen analysis covers the demand side of a two-sided transaction. The supply side, the fulfillment record, or the deliberate absence of one is not in these filings. That half of the transaction is the half the analysis cannot reach. The phrasing of Nvidia's public response is itself worth reading closely. Calling the concern silly is a register choice. It does not address the specific evidentiary claim that named institutions produced named model numbers in writing, repeatedly, across 6 years. Nvidia did not, in the public record produced during that week's exchange, dispute the existence of the procurement filings. The company disputed the implication. That is a narrower rebuttal than it may first appear. The record holds that distinction without comment. The limits of the record compound the omissions. The filings do not say whether Wirescreen's methodology for identifying People's Liberation Army linkage is contested. The institutional designations are Wirescreen's analytical judgment applied to procurement data, and that judgment has not been independently audited in the public record available at the time of publication. The filings do not say how many of the 500 instances postdate the specific export control rounds that explicitly covered the named chip models, which would be the subset most directly relevant to evasion rather than ordinary pre-restriction procurement activity. That distinction matters, and the record does not make it. The filings do not say whether comparable procurement documents from the same institutions name domestic Chinese chips or chips from suppliers outside United States jurisdiction, which would speak to whether the Nvidia naming reflects preference or necessity, or the absence of alternatives the institutions had already identified and found insufficient. The filings do not say whether Nvidia has commissioned or received an independent audit of its distribution chain against the named institutions, or whether regulators have opened a formal inquiry. Those documents are not part of what Wirescreen's dataset contains. What the record establishes is the paper trail and the public dispute. What it does not establish is the link between those two facts that would make either characterization the correct one. That link, if it exists, lives in a document neither party has yet entered into the record. Read plainly, these filings are a documented named 6-year demand signal from institutions the United States has explicitly placed off limits for the chips they named. Read against their silences, they are an incomplete transaction record, substantial on intent, absent on outcome. The gap between those two readings is not a failure of the analysis. It is the most precise thing the analysis can honestly say. The filings tell us what was written down. The document that would tell us what was shipped has not yet been written into the record, or has not yet been made part of it. The document that could move this from procurement intent to confirmed flow would be an export enforcement action, a customs filing, or a distributor audit. When that document surfaces and enters the record, that is the one to read closely next. Subscribe and turn on notifications, so the next filing lands here when it does.